Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Wally Stegall, the Technical Fellow at the Morey Corporation. Wally has led engineering, sales, technical management, and business development efforts for the company. He has nearly 30 years of industry experience, having previously worked for Textrol, VES and AMETEK. He currently sits on the American Trucking Association's Technology and Maintenance Councils as the Vice Chair of Future Truck. Welcome here, Wally.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So tell me what, first of all, why don't you just tell our listeners what the Morey Corporation is?
The Morey Corporation is a research and development company, design services, and a electronics manufacturer of rugged electronics.
And is it global or domestic or?
We're domestic. We're based in Woodridge, Illinois, although we do ship globally.
Got it. And tell me about your background in connected vehicles.
My background in connected vehicles starts last century in the 90s. I worked with the first telematics systems that were being fielded for long-haul truck, which included the Marine Corps and long-haul trucking fleets. It was all satellite-based then, but there was also FM sideband for transmitting data to a truck. Cellular came along. Most of that was involved in data integration, as well as making sure that the devices did what they said they did.
So in those early days, what was the telematic? What were you doing? Collecting data from where the truck was, or something different?
Well, most of the telematics companies already had the logistics part locked down. Whether this was Qualcomm at the time, or Highwaymaster, or Terion, but they didn't have the vehicle integration part. So interfacing to the J1708 or J1939 data buses. So getting that deeper, richer data set from the vehicle other than just location and some basic I/O.
So was this for maintenance?
Fault codes, yes. Fault codes were the first thing. Overspeed, and then eventually you these telematics devices have enough processing power to use the data bus to determine driver behavior, such as hard braking.
And then in the early days, what did you do? What did anyone do with that information?
Mainly, the killer application was logistics, making sure you knew where your load was, where the asset was, and that you were going to be delivered on time.
That sounds like a pretty important factor.
Yes.
So what do you see as the state of connected vehicles today? Just in general, just connected vehicles before we get into trucking.
Well, you've got your OnStars today, which have and also telematics generally, which has risen to a much higher level because of the richer data set that you now have with diagnostics on board. It's still reactive, but the diagnostic level is much higher. And you do get some preliminary warnings that you need to do a general maintenance, that kind of thing. And it helps connect the OEMs and the service providers. And even you have access to a database of data, which can kind of correlate some items. So basically, it's the same thing, but they've been able to use the power of the back end of the information technology that is available today.
So you, I presume, make a distinction between connected vehicles versus autonomous vehicles?
Yes. Just because you're connected has nothing to do with, so I haven't touched autonomous vehicles so far in this conversation.
Right. I realize that. Where does the state of connected vehicles go into the future?
Okay. So into the future, connected vehicle requires, not just so let's call it vehicle to X, vehicle to whatever. So you got vehicle to your back end, to your cloud. You've got vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to people. You've got vehicle to anything around, vehicle to vehicle communications, and that's where connected vehicle will ultimately have to go. So there's some testing being done in Wyoming along a stretch of highway where they're getting data from the tractor unit. But they also want data from a trailer unit, and that's one of the problems in the over-the-road trucking. We don't have good communications between the tractor and trailer as the data richness on the trailer is starting to grow with new systems. So there's no standard for tractor to trailer to provide that data. And That's one issue. But the main thing is there's so much more data. You in order to reach levels of autonomy 0 through 5, as defined by SAE, you've got to replace the driver's nervous system, his intuitive feel, whether this is car or truck. So those are the level of connectivity just has to increase completely, and not only for just pure autonomy to get from point A to point B, but also to improve dwell times, meaning you're not dwelling at a location like for a roadside inspection, or because it's now done automatically when you drive by. They know you're not speeding. They know the driver's hours of service records are good, so he's authorized to drive. He's alert. There's things like that, but then just the higher levels, because of regulations, that the cargo is safe. It's maintained. The product is being not the trailer, but the product is being maintained at temperature, or the cargo area is just safely secured. There's a lot of richness of information that impacts enterprise, as well as the levels of autonomy that kind of merge together as technology continues to increase, and that level of connectivity is going to increase. But you also have the balance, big data versus small data. Ultimately, you want as much data being processed locally or at the edge or by the onboard AI, to use a buzzword, so that your wide area and local area communications to all those V2X items are more like credit card exchanges, as opposed to big data dumps all the time.
So that sounds like you're going to have a lot of sensors inside the trailer itself.
It's in the trailer right now. Trailers are fairly dumb, but the data is growing within the trailer. In the tractor side, people think there are all these trailer sensors, but more sensors will have to be added in order to replace the human element, because again, you've got to replace somebody's nervous system and their intuition with sensors and algorithms.
So where does 5G play in all of this?
Well, 5G is a future, which as soon as if you can ever meet the levels, the wide area and local area, like Cat M1 is a first step. It's not 5G, but the idea is that you can have an individual sensors communicating locally, V2V or wide area, and you could also have full-blown LTE communicating, where you can do large amounts of data. So it's the speed that increases, and also it's the density support in an individual cell. That's why 5G and future standards are important. Being able to have X number of transmitters and receivers working all at once within a cell.
So it sounds like that'll be the big leap.
That 5G is a big leap, and certainly above 4G and 3G. 3G was great to support telematics as it is today and in the past, but it's we need to go beyond 4G and have full 5G capability fielded, which is still in process. I mean, you know.
Yeah. So tell me about platooning. First of all, define what that is.
Okay. So platooning is when you have a tractor and a trailer, followed by another tractor and trailer, or more tractors and trailers, and the first tractor trailer is basically clearing the way so that everyone else can draft behind, so they're not fighting the wind resistance. And every once in a while, the guy who's leading the way falls back and gets in line, and someone else leads the platoon. So that's it. It's truckers have been doing it for years. They have been platooning among themselves manually to save fuel. So that's the bottom line.
So how many trucks might ride together in a platoon?
As well, if you look between Indianapolis and Chicago, it looks like a lot. So I mean, there's a line of trucks in the evening, and trying to get between them because they're following so closely is very difficult. So you can have a platoon with 2 or however many can get in the line without causing congestion, I assume. But I don't think you want more than a handful though in forming a platoon, normal circumstances. But it's an old practice. It's just that it's been, it's totally dependent on the human element, which a lot of drivers are extremely safe and they know their craft. But as generational changes, we're looking at replacing drivers, the baby boomers and even older, and now the Gen Xers. I'm a Gen Xer. My generation is so small we don't really count. It's about getting the millennials and Gen Z driving, because Gen Z is now coming of age to be able to drive. So we've got to get those young drivers in situations they feel comfortable with, and that's one concern with technology and how technology can help bridge some of the gaps so that it'll be less difficult than it has been to operate a piece of equipment, and not as stressful.
So where does autonomy fit in all of this in the future?
So autonomy, let's start with platooning. I'm going to say platooning is extremely important for the initial development of autonomy for commercial vehicle and commercial truck, just simply because we learn what we don't know. Now, is this generation of platooning systems that's out and being tested today going to be what's adopted? No, there's going to be changes. There's going to have to be some evolution, because every time somebody does something new, they find out what they don't know. So I think it's important that we do platooning, but I also think it's important for everybody to realize that it's not another generation is probably going to have to come along from a technology standpoint for it to be truly ready for wide adoption. So I think platooning is important for the development of autonomy. But for me, the going from point A to point B has been figured out to a large extent. A lot of the challenges are well defined, well understood, because there's been a lot of testing and development there. Now, replacing the driver, having the diagnostic system so that that on a trailer that or even on a tractor, a wheel end is going bad. There's not sensors there. So you could have a thermal event or a fire, and nobody would know it if it was a truly completely autonomous vehicle, even if a driver was doing a ride-along, just because you still needed a driver to be there for certain instances, although otherwise for long-haul trucking it could be autonomous. There's a lot of development that has to go on to parallel the levels of autonomy, 0 to 5, 5 being full autonomous. You need the same levels of maintenance, performance measurements, and awareness of 0 to 5 on the maintenance side. Not just maintenance, but performance. So in case of platooning, you need to know that you can brake and accelerate within a narrow band, everyone who's in the same train. And you would also probably need to know that the tractor and trailer, that any group of individual tractor and trailer that is following is also outfitted with the same level of technology, so that they would interact correctly. So those kind of things are going to have to be developed and evolved so that we can advance to where autonomy needs to be, because the long-haul trucking issue of not having enough drivers, I've kind of mentioned the generational changeovers that are happening between baby boomers versus the millennials and the Gen Zs that are now getting of age. Long-haul trucking at the end of the day is a hard lifestyle, and the turnover rate is 90 or more % year over year, and there's a lot of industry cannibalizing going on. So it's not about pay, and although pay is always important, keeping up with inflation and whatnot, but it's a good job, but the lifestyle is very hard. So we need to get automation to a level so that it can truly take the hard part of long haul trucking so that people can live normal lives. But we still need drivers. Airplanes can all but fly themselves, but we still need pilots. So I don't see this as killing a lot of jobs. I see it changing the way people work so that we won't have the shortage that we have right now, and they can enjoy the life they want to live. And that's why autonomy is one of the reasons it's important to me, as well as the enterprise and economic and safety benefits that would come with it.
So in the future, do you see basically a driver maybe driving the truck locally, and then when they get on the highway for a long stretch of miles, then it becomes autonomous and the driver is doing something else or something different?
Or something different, or a load, or the box with the cargo is transferred to another asset. So you could have a bed which is the front and which is the back of the trailer, because all it's doing is going from point A to point B. It could be regional or it could be long haul on the interstate, and then that load is transferred to someone who's really taking the last mile. There could be seasons or localities where a driver just has to be, but also drivers do more than just drive the trucks. They're part of the service that people receive at the docks. And but that part has to be automated too. So there's industrial automation that's going to go along with the automation of the vehicle, but you're still going to need people. There's still a human factor in certain for some needs, and also with the technicians. This equipment isn't going to, even though with the levels of maintenance I was talking about, it becomes its own rolling. This is the tractor and trailer together, become its own rolling service bay, and you get a prescriptive notification saying, "Oh, here's a problem. We're going to deal with it when I roll into this maintenance area," and the trucks and the tractor trailer are telling you what needs to be done. And then you're going to have grades of technician, just like you have grades of mechanic and technicians for airlines who are going to take care of certain issues. So I see it as not killing jobs, but definitely changing jobs, and there'll be transitions, but it will be a very different lifestyle, and also I think more levels of advancement potential relative to what someone's ambitions guide them to, just like with aircraft. So it's the world's changing.
So what is the need for autonomous trucks? I hear this in the market a lot with autonomous cars. People saying, well, I want to drive myself. I don't want this car driving it. I want to be driving it. What is the need for autonomous trucks? Is it because of the shortage of drivers? Is it economics? Is it something else?
Economics is important. So let's talk. So I've already mentioned driver shortage issue. It's a chronic issue. So I came into the commercial vehicle world in the late 80s, and it was a chronic issue then. It's a chronic issue now, and it just continues to get worse, it seems. There's also another mega trend that has changed is e-commerce. So we're all working in an e-commerce world where everything is 24/7, 7 days a week, and loads have to be just in time. And if anything changes, you need to be able to react, and the asset needs to be able to help say, hey, like in a human body, you know what? I can't keep this speed up. If I do, I'm going to hurt myself. So you slow down a little bit. You realize you're going to need a repair, because if you kept going at the higher level of speed, you were going to have a major failure with collateral damage, right? Now the infrastructure of the shipper and the truck fleet take action. Someone's dispatched, they take over the load, and then the autonomous vehicle goes in for repair that it's already told the service center that it needs, and the load was not late. It was just when the person still expected it, because you had enough flow of information. And that's like going to an end customer. But even if you're making butter, it's the same thing, or shipping butter. if you're shipping butter, it has to be just in time to factories, and it's no different now. So it's the e-commerce world is across industry interactions between factories, between different manufacturers of raw material to end goods. So that butter may go into somebody who's making other products. And if you're not there at the right time, they need to know it. And actions need to be taken to make sure that you're on time. So shippers like Wayfair, Land O'Lakes, and then the big fleets, Amazon, UPS, FedEx, and all the smaller trucking companies, they all have the e-commerce item that's driving it. This also is a way to automation is a way to drive to more efficiency and to potentially differentiate yourself in the marketplace. If you can use your information and your process and your procedures and the way you manage yourself in this new technology environment, you can be a breakout performer and truly advance. The world never stops moving. So the trucking industry measures itself in penny per mile. How much is this costing me for every mile? And they're literally trying to squeeze out pennies. And a few pennies per mile or a penny per mile can make a difference between you and another shipper from a significant profitability standpoint to your shareholders, or on winning a contract, because you have more flexibility than your competition.
So why not move forward with connected vehicles as you described for all the reasons you defined, and skip autonomous vehicles totally and simply financially incent the driver community to continue driving and move forward in connectivity and keep the drivers?
Because I just think it's natural for the two technologies to evolve. So yes, connectivity will increase because it will have to increase, and there'll be people engaged in developing this new autonomous world. So as an example, let's talk about where trucking is right now. The actual asset, the truck. The truck that's going to be built in 2023 and 2024 is already defined. Okay, it's already defined, and they're working on the next vintage of vehicles. So if you want to impact anything that's happening at the end of the next decade, you've got to have the standards written by 2020.
Wow.
Okay. So so guess what? Technology always leaps forward beyond its application. So the first, we're like a lot of the consumer-driven technology that drives our cell phones and the cloud and the things that can be done really hits the back end side, the cloud side, the logistics side, management, and where pieces of equipment have a longer lifespan, and it could take from the time a fleet orders a vehicle to it could be 5 years before they start receiving that vehicle they specified, and it could be another 15 years before until they cycle through all those trailers that they decide to buy in that 1 year.
That's a long lead time.
So that's a long lead time and a long life. So larger fleets have this complicated lifespan, and the military is even longer, right? So the bottom line is technology is always and logistics. The logistics of outfitting technology is going to outstrip the assets. So that's why third-party devices continue to dominate the connectivity world, and the third party and the OEMs are going to have to find a way to work together, because and there's another mega trend. Just like people don't own things apparently as much as they used to. They rent, they lease, whatever. But a lot of people don't want the overhead of ownership. They lease. So I'm referring to fleets, whether it's ag or construction. You don't need that piece of equipment literally 24 hours a day. You only need it when you need it. So that's all people want to pay for anymore. So leasing has exploded to a point where leasing companies are becoming as much a factor in speccing out the technology that's in a vehicle, because all the players, the shipper, the leasing agent, the owner, the operator, the OEM, the tier one, the end customer, be it a factory or an individual, they all have data needs from that asset. So that's where the connected vehicle is we have to build all the infrastructure and pipes so it's secure and safe for that connected vehicle to then become that fully autonomous thing. So it's going to go in steps over time. So I believe there will be fully autonomous vehicles in small volume on the roads the end of next decade. But that's where we'll be. There'll be small volumes. We'll just be starting, and it's probably another good 20 years before it. Maybe I'm being a little too slow on that, but it could be. It's going to be. It's a 20-year span to get where we can see what it's going to be. But in the meantime, all these technological enablers, prices are going to go down as the price of technology from a computing power standpoint has continuously dropped, and we'll have much better autonomous vehicles than we ever imagined today. But there's a lot of infrastructure there's infrastructure and ways of communicating, talking, and thinking that are being laid down in standard committees today, from the fleet side to the OEM side to ISO to SAE, that have to be developed in order to make it all work together.
Thank you, Wally Stegall, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Thank you.